stop the show. In the tight living room, the cottage is crowded, with stirred hearts and easy cheer. The demanding hike through the gauntlet of gale and limestone traps well behind you, its blessing on you like windburn on your face, and its troubles belonging to yesterday, where the place all your troubles go and wait patiently for you to return. This is a poem called Stop the Show, and I wrote it moments after walking out of a little living room in a cottage in Ballyvaughan in Ireland in 2023. I went on a walking tour with 20 other intrepid seekers and souls, and I met a few great friends, and I think one of them is a lifelong friend. And I remember this sense of trying to find my voice in that group. Sounds like such a silly thing because we were there to listen to David White, but I mean, he's one of my heroes as a poet. His voice and the way that he blends his insights on Zen and mysticism and spirituality, and treading so softly in those spaces, and also having spoken to leaders for well over 10 years in the corporate space. He was somebody whose mind I resonated with, plus he just had these incredible stories to tell, and his command of his own spoken word was so powerful. If you haven't checked his poetry out, I strongly suggest you do. But we're there in Ireland, and he's so well connected to the folks of Ballyvaughan. He's like almost a local treasure. And he's got two local Irish musicians in there with us. And the one of them is playing an Irish equivalent of the bagpipes called the uilleann pipes. So you don't blow into it. You pump it with your arms, right? There's I think one or two bellows that they have to play, but then the actual trilling of the instrument is similar, I would imagine. But there's a peat bog fire, and there's this tight little living room in the cottage where at least 25 people are crammed into, plus all the facilitators of this walking tour, plus a camera, and all these little chairs are squashed off to the side, and it's perfect, right? And David's got these two guests in Blackie O'Connor, I think, and Cyril O'Donoghue, if I'm not mistaken. I might have got that wrong. I forget their names now. But these guys are incredible musicians. The one's on a bouzouki, like a guitar kind of instrument, and the other one, Blackie, he plays the uilleann pipes. And the mood that we've generated over the past, call it, I think it was a 10-day tour. So like after the first 6 or 7 days, the day previous to that, we had just gone on this incredible trek, like a kind of initiation by a guy called Patrick McCormick, walking across the Burren, this rugged limestone highland landscape, windswept. Hey Jen, nice to see you. There's this windswept landscape in Ireland. And we're walking on top of the Burren, and we're getting led through this. It's not just a hike, right? Patrick's taking us through all these ancient sites, dropping stories, initiating us into the land very subtly, very subtly. And David White's dropping poetry every now and again. So the whole thing becomes this incredibly 6-hour mystical experience, right? And it's a difficult hike. And even the journey that we follow has got this spiritual resonance and symmetry to it. It's like the best way I can describe it is an initiation. So we're finished, and then at the end of that, everybody ends up at Patrick's house, and all these local fiddlers get on their fiddles, and there's a crack, right? Everyone's singing and drinking wine and dancing in his living room, and his wife's prepared this enormous meal. It's just quite an experience, quite an incredible experience, because you get drawn into an authentic Irish crack about how the local people in North Clare like literally get together and practice a living form of community that's non-performative. In other words, it's not a made up engagement. It's just all completely organic. It stays with you. It really, really stays with you, and it changed me. It changed me. So here I am in this cottage the next day, and everyone's kind of still reeling from that previous experience. And now we've got these two musicians in the cottage that are playing their guts out, like they're drawing everybody into the experience. And the whole 7 days, I realized that what I've been trying to do is find my voice in amongst what should be my peers, and I realized that I can't find it, right? And I realize also that um, that there's so many preconceived ideas in my head that I'm not even aware of. This is the way that I'm showing up because we live with this idea that to be accepted in a group or in a society or in any social context, we have to adhere to a certain expected norm. But when you're meeting strangers for the first time, like we often do on the internet, you have absolutely no idea uh, what these people expect or their whole internal journeys that they're having. And you're just this kind of point of noise on the outside that somebody's having a completely unrelated subjective experience on. And I realized something. I saw a reflection in myself in that moment. I watched myself uh, trying to be ready to say or to be the right thing. And it was subtle because I don't count myself an inauthentic person, but I noticed that there's still this tension inside of me to try and sound a certain way, and the kindest way I can explain that to somebody else who has that experience is don't be so hard on yourself, because authenticity has to be practiced. To find our voice, we have to say the wrong thing in the wrong way. We almost have to be inauthentic and feel the cringe, and then that becomes the feedback loop to say, no, not that way. That's not for me. And that experience that I had in that little cottage was also transformative for me. Excuse me. And this is the poem that I wrote when I walked out. It's called Stop the Show. It says, in the tight living room, the cottage is crowded with stirred hearts and easy cheer. The demanding hike through the gauntlet of gale and limestone traps well behind you. Its blessing on you like windburn on your face, and its troubles belonging to yesterday, the place all your troubles go, and wait patiently for you to return. White rafters, heels thumping on the wooden floor, and the uilleann pipes working the bellows of your Irish kundalini to a holy fire, touching the hem of reckless mirth. Because when you're sitting listening to that music, you get drawn almost trance-like into a state where you touch the edge of a reckless mirth, a reckless joy that isn't destructive, but it's a kind of ecstasy. You actually get pulled into a kind of ecstasy with that kind of trance music, and the uilleann pipe can definitely do that. White rafters, heels thumping on the wooden floor, and the uilleann pipes working the bellows of your Irish kundalini to a holy fire, touching the hem of reckless mirth. Here at last, your soul is caught off guard. Here at last, your soul is caught off guard as the dancer in you comes alive. Before the shadow of your public self, before the shadow of your public self becomes aware, you can hear it. You can hear it rehearsing its lines in preparation to flood back onto the stage with the mask of readiness to face the crowd. Don't we all have that moment? We're in a conversation and we're not really listening. We're trying to gather ourselves for the argument we're trying to have. When we're in a meeting at work everything becomes an ego performance because we want to show exactly the right stance and tone and leadership and poise. So much is pointed onto that pinprick of intentionality, so much so that we are putting on a kind of show, and you can overhear yourself, a shadow version of yourself, trying to prim itself up and prime itself for the conversation it's trying to have and the show it's trying to put on. How much tension do we walk around with all the time? I do. I do that. Even coming on here, man, it's I'm not battling against myself. But when I become tired and fatigued, like I've been in a kind of fugue state these last couple of days, which I can't help for. And when I get into that, there's this natural default in me which wants to default to a kind of ingrained behavior because that requires less effort than just dealing with the discomfort of stumbling through my words and losing my train of thought and sounding incoherent and copying the vulnerable reality of that. And the thing is, none of us are being vulnerable with each other. Politicians certainly can't be vulnerable. They have to say the right thing. Otherwise, there's bad faith actors on the other side of the aisle that are ready to tear them to shreds and ridicule them for having made a mistake. That's mistakes are how we learn. Yeah. Here at last, your soul is caught off guard as the dancer in you comes alive. It's only in these moments of ecstasy, actually. That's why we're supposed to practice ecstatic dance and the kind of experiences of movement and flow in the company of other people, so that we can lose this tightness of inhibition that we live with and expect everyone else to do it. That's why, for all the things that are wrong with alcohol, the one thing it does is it loosens that. You know, it is a social lubricant. I just wish there was another uh, wholesome way that we could practice that. And this is why, excuse me, when you're doing running or gym or something, even though you're getting those endorphins and you're getting into the flow in your own body, it's a solitary experience. There's no connection with other people. The trick is you want to be practicing something as part of your life practice, where you're listening to music and dancing and moving. We've got a 3-year-old and she is born to play tricks. She's born to hide away and express herself physically with her body. And if we don't make room for that and normalize that, we're going to slowly suppress that natural language that she has. And didn't we all have our natural language suppressed in that way? Here at last, your soul is caught off guard as the dancer in you comes alive. That's our Kundalini. That's our natural body's consciousness that's coming alive. Here at last, your soul is caught off guard as the dancer in you comes alive. Before the shadow of your public self becomes aware, you can hear it. You can hear it rehearsing its lines in preparation to flood back onto the stage of the present moment with a mask of readiness to face the crowd. And as I sat there in that ecstasy, right in the homely stillness of it, in the eye of the triumphant storm of wild music between Friar's Green and Stormy Night, a voice speaks out again from the prompt box of your soul. Right in the homely stillness, in the eye of the triumphant storm of wild music between Friar's Green and Stormy Night, a voice speaks out again from the prompt box, soft and resonant with myth and power. Soft and resonant with myth and power. A simple line that changes everything by leaving everything alone. A simple line that changes everything by leaving everything alone. Stop the show. Stop the show. Can I give myself permission to simply stop the show? Can I give myself permission to show up exactly as I am? Tired, confused, bewildered, overwhelmed, excited, innocent, clumsy, angry, however that might be. Can I give myself permission to show up exactly as I am? I don't have to please everybody. I don't have to lead everybody. I don't have to impress everybody. I don't have to be liked by everybody. I have to like me. And I'll tell you the quickest way to not liking me is to shame myself for the way that I honestly feel today. A simple line that changes everything by leaving everything alone. And this was the voice of myself that spoke to me, almost like a hand on my shoulder that said, just stop, just stop. A simple line that changes everything by leaving everything alone. 3 words, 3 words. Stop the show. Stop the show. And then, as I sat there in that crowd, I had the freedom in that ecstasy to just like have a small breakdown. I didn't wail and thrash about, but I had one of those like body shaking cries. It was like a release of all of that tension that I'd been holding for 6 and 7 days, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be noticed by somebody who I valued so much. It's seen at least in the depth and the merit that I saw myself, which I failed at, which I failed at. Right in the homely stillness, in the eye of the triumphant storm of wild music between friars green and stormy night, a voice speaks out, again from the prompt box, soft and resonant with myth and power. A simple line that changes everything by leaving everything alone. 3 words. Stop the show. And then the soft tears come. Relief. Relief spilling over the levee of this tight composure, carrying a spring melt of secret prayers for meaning, for the refuge of acceptance, and the arms of grace, descend around you, holding you as you wanted to be held all along, assuring you with familiar presence of remembering, assuring you with a familiar presence of remembering that the theatrics that you're always putting on are always completely unnecessary, and that the audience and the critics and the talent scouts were never there for you, being instead all caught in the arresting light of their own drama, full of comedy and tragedy, and that the final act, of this performance is no act at all. And all your fumbled lines and all your unrequited effort as revealing and essential to the plot as the score and the lighting you could never have chosen for yourself. We don't choose the backdrops of life that our moments unfold in. And sometimes when we allow the imperfection, we realize actually how perfect the moment was. The amount of times my wife and I are trying to create or force a moment between us, or a moment with Maya, or a moment with friends, it's always the show that we're putting on. It's always this tight expectation of trying to fucking shoehorn reality into how it's supposed to unfold. And it's always a fuck up. And the irony is the exact way that it fucks up and the exact surprise that unfolds. We always laugh afterwards and go, oh my God, that's exactly how it should have unfolded. What else were we expecting, right? How many times do we all do that? And that the audience and the critics and the talent scouts were never there for you, being instead all caught in the arresting light of their own drama. Everyone's caught up in their own story. No one's noticing you and your bullshit. And if they want to stick around for what you have to say or who you are as a person, the better chance you've got is to let your own light shine and let your own signal fly free, because that's how you're going to attract resonance in your life. People are going to be resonant to the authenticity that they see shining through all the fake bullshit. How sick are we? How sick are we of the fake bullshit? And the audience and the critics and the talent scouts were never there for you, being instead all caught in the arresting light of their own drama, full of comedy and tragedy. And that the final act is no act at all. And all your fumbled lines and unrequited effort are as revealing and essential to the plot as the score and the lighting that you could never have chosen for yourself. The music shares its truth with the ear of your understanding. You can surrender to harmony even as you choose to allow your own defiance. Now, I'll let you meditate on that. You can surrender to a harmony even as you choose to allow your own defiance. We're all this contradiction, this tension of opposites. We all are stuck with this dualistic tension of wanting to be. I just want to be accepted the way I am. But then I also want the world to not create such an enormous resistance in my attempt to become something that I'm aiming for. So we're all caught in this, like, is it being or is it becoming? You can surrender to a harmony even as you choose to allow your own defiance. And that was called Stop the Show from Stepping Through, which is likely to be backwards on the screen. That's about all I've got for today. I'm having quite a disappointing coffee because I've been off coffee for 40 days. I was observing Lent. I'm not a Catholic, but I decided just to practice this idea of grace, a lived, embodied version of it. And what is grace really? But letting nature work its work. And I don't really have any deep reflections on Lent today. Maybe I'll let this Easter season pass out and see what comes through. And I'll talk about the signal of the moment that's coming to me. But I didn't know what to say, and then it just reminded me that there is something to say when you don't know what to say. You don't sometimes have to say anything, or something that you've already said before says it well enough. We don't have to be these these monkeys on an organ in the market dancing for other people's pleasure and delight. No one gives a fuck anyway. No one cares, man. No one cares. Someone's going to watch this and then doom scroll onto something 5 seconds later. Yeah. And half of our problem with all of this noise and overwhelm in the world is we are so sure that we need to put on a performance, contribute to the noise, have our say about something. Can you imagine shouting to tell everybody that the noise is too loud? Just think about that. That's what we do. Anyway, so stop the show. Give yourself permission. Just be you for a minute and create that beachhead and let that be your sanctuary, and then just keep widening that beachhead from there. And if this resonated with you, if you give a hoot about this kind of insight and this kind of practice, come and find me on Substack. That's where the magic happens, and come and take part in the community and the project that's unfolding called A Better Way. Maybe it's for you.